Hello and welcome to the CS2 Beginner's Guide. Today I'm going to be going over utility usage. I know a lot of new players are hopping on this game with the CS2 hype train, and none of y'all know what the fuck you're doing. So I'm here to shed some light on some of the mistakes you guys may be making. To start us off, when you're throwing grenades in this game, you do not want to be moving left or right. As you can see, I got this little red wire here. This is showing where the grenade is going to go when I release it. And if I move right, it changes the trajectory. And if I move left, it changes it. So if I'm moving left and I release a grenade, it's not going to go straight. It's going to fuck up. It's going to fuck everything up. So, and the same is true if you're moving backwards. It's not going to go as far. If you're moving forwards, it's going to go further than if you were stationary. So what this means is that when you're throwing grenades, you want to be looking where you're throwing, and just at most you want to run forward. Don't be doing any of this strafing bullshit. I've seen a lot of new players just like being like, oh, and then oh. So that's something you need to keep in mind. When you're throwing a grenade, you want to be looking where you're throwing it and only moving forwards or not moving at all. Second tip, to start off the general knowledge, you've got your standard throw, your left click, which goes pretty far. But you also have a right click, which just lobs the grenade down at your feet. And this is very useful for smoking off something that's just directly in front of you. I've seen a lot of new players, they're not aware of this right click, and so they'll just be aiming down at the ground and trying to get it in place like that because they know they can't throw it straight ahead because it's going to go far. So they look down, and so keep in mind you've got a right click you can do. It's a nice little lob, makes it nice and easy. I see a lot of players out here. They'll be standing in front of an object, like for instance this box, and they'll be wanting to nade. They hear terrorists are coming up banana, and they hear it, and they wanna get some grenade damage in before beginning the fight. And they'll be standing here, and they'll be like, oh, I can't throw down here. I gotta throw it over the box. I gotta make sure I throw it over the box. So they'll aim way up here, then they'll release the grenade. As you can see, it's blowing up way too high. That would not actually deal much damage, if any at all, to a player running beneath it. But what they don't realize is your grenade in Counter-Strike, when you release it, has an arc. So when you're throwing a nade, for instance, over this box, you can actually throw it while looking at the box, just a little bit below, and it will blow up actually low enough to where that would actually deal some good damage. And it's even more relevant for Molotovs because Molotovs, as you know, blow up mid-air. They have a certain time that they have to reach the ground or they will pop in the air, and you're not going to get anything from that. Alright, so that's general grenade knowledge. I'm going to start off with the flashbang. Now, when it comes to the flashbang, if you're a new player, my advice is to just not throw any flashbangs, because until you get a good feel for how to throw grenades, and flashbangs in particular need to be utilized in a certain way to where you're not blinding your teammates. And if you're a new player, you're probably just going to be blinding your teammates because flashbangs are so easy to dodge that any opponent that if you're throwing a poor flash, any opponent that sees it will be able to dodge it no problem, and your teammates won't dodge it because if you're a new player, you're probably not even calling out that you're throwing a flash. I never hear new players like, hey, I'm flashing banana, and then I never hear that from new players. They just launch their flashbang, and it fucks up the whole team. Having said that, I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of ways to use the flashbang anyway. There are pop flashes, which is something like this. So you throw a lineup flash. These generally have to be learned, or you can figure them out in practice mode. But it's just a lineup flash that you know you can throw every time, and you know where it's gonna pop. Have it set up and you know you can throw that flash every time, and if there's somebody there, it will blind them, guaranteed. It's noob friendly just because like you just are learning a throw. What you can do, an easy noob friendly flash you can do is to just lob it to the left and then peek out with the flash. You're turning away from it so it can't blind you, and if you're peeking with it, you'll be able to hopefully catch somebody even if they turn away from it, because that's a flash that's very easy for an enemy player to see coming and to turn away from. But if you're coming around the wall with it, then they're either going to be blind or they're turned around. They have to make a decision. You could have one player stay at banana and then just throw a flash, and that way it'll give the impression to the enemy team that your team is still going to push on to B site. It may not actually draw a rotate from A, but at the very least it should keep both of the players that are playing B on B site, because they won't want to have a guy rotate to A if they're getting flashed and think that they are at risk of a site take. Even better would be to just have some teammates throw extra flashbangs on the ground before they leave, and that way you can throw a couple of flashbangs over, drawing out the amount of time that you're keeping the enemy team here. Another scenario, you might want to use a flashbang. You're playing car, the enemy team is coming up banana. If they're shooting you down, and if they're really close to you and you're afraid you might die, you could just toss a flashbang while you're running away. That way if they're on your tail, they could potentially be blinded, but even if they aren't, they will still have to avoid that flashbang, increasing your time to get away. But as a new player, the easiest way for you to avoid flashing teammates is to just be aware of where your teammates are holding and where they're looking, and to make sure that any flashes you throw do not land within their field of vision. On a similar note, the biggest reason I see for new players not flashing enemies is because they'll throw the flashbang too far. A flashbang only works if it pops in front of your eyes. If it's right above you, it flashes you a lot less. So that's the biggest reason new players struggle flashing enemies, because they're throwing flashbangs too far. If a dude's standing right here, you're not going to blind him. So you need to make sure you're not throwing flashbangs past the enemy. They need to pop in front of them. Also, quick note, the right click blob, you just look a little bit up. You can throw over objects that are like right at your eye level. And with something like this, like you could throw a flashbang like that and you can peek because it's blocked by the barrels. But even if you don't know any pop flashes, you can still throw a flashbang that can assist your teammate. It's a lot more effective for one person to throw the flash and the other person to peek than it is for the same person to be throwing in. So like if you had a boiler smoked off, you had a teammate ready to swing arches, you could throw a flash off the wall like this. That's popping like right around this window. But this is a scenario where it'd be easy for you to throw a flash without knowing anything, and your teammate could swing out with you on the flash. Throwing support flashes is a very good thing. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about smoke grenades. A lot of teams, especially on Inferno, they like to just smoke mid every round, especially if they don't have a good op player on their team. They'll just smoke mid every round so they don't have to deal with it. I would not recommend this, just because late in the round it's very good to have extra utility that you can utilize to prevent or to hold off a site push from the terrorists. So maybe if you're getting slammed mid every round, then sure, go ahead. But otherwise, I would hold off. If you can wait a little bit and then smoke mid, that would be much better. So smokes are for maintaining map control by preventing pushes. You can also use it to take space, to take map control. So you could, instead of smoking close, you could smoke far. Then you could have a player going through boiler up into alt window, and then the two of you could work together to try to gain some alt mid control. Alternatively, on the T side, for example, you would want to smoke, if you wanted to do a split, you could smoke arches off and make it so that you only have to deal with boiler. You could have a player going through apps. You could also smoke off hit, make it so that you have an easier time taking sight, clearing all the angles, of course. And also, for those who are not aware, a smoke grenade can be used to put out a Molotov, which is good if you're in a position where you cannot retreat from the molly. Like if you're playing pit and terrorists are coming onto site and you don't want to leave your cover and they molly you off, you could just smoke the molly and then just kind of work around the smoke, try to use it to your advantage. Now I'm going to give you an example of something you don't want to be doing that I see pretty often, because like I was saying, what you want to be doing if you're just smoking mid, you want to be smoking it and then you have a player over here at porch, and then you have a player over here at arch, and they have a nice crossfire going, so any terrorists that come through the smoke have to deal with a player on each side, and you can just gun them down real nice and easy. What I've seen players do, some players, they'll smoke themselves off, and this is something you never want to do, because now your player at arch is stranded. He's got to deal with any push that occurs on his own, and it's going to be much more difficult. You cannot help him out anymore because you've smoked yourself off, and he's probably just going to get gunned down. And here's what can happen: the terrorists will just come up, they'll pick him off, and now they can just creep their way into boiler, and now they're on the flank, and now they can they're gonna just come out of App's balcony, and you're gonna be sitting over here having yourself smoked off, and they're just gonna shoot you in the back. You want to be using smokes in a way where the only way the terrorists can use them is by pushing through them. Like, they have to push through them, and pushing through a smoke is very dangerous. You'll be blind, and then you'll come out the other side and you'll just get shot in the face. You don't want to throw any smokes where they can like maneuver around them or use them to their advantage. An example on B side, I've seen, like on B, you want to be smoking banana coming up to site, and that way, like, you generally have two players at B. I mean, why wouldn't you? That way, when they're coming up, you can have a guy at new box here, and then you can have a guy at coffins. Is this still coffins? Holy shit, it's not coffins. Have a guy at coffins, and you can both have a nice crossfire going with the smoke. I've seen a player smoke off the middle of site like this, and then do some crazy wacky shit where they're like peeking over here. And you don't want to do this. If your teammate at coffins dies, and you want to smoke off part of the site so that you can maneuver around the smoke in like a 1v3 situation where they're coming onto site and you're the only one on site, and you're trying to like hold the site for your teammates to rotate, that would be a scenario in which smoking off site would be fine, and it would actually be beneficial for you to do, so that you can kind of like try to get a pick, maneuver around the smoke, and so that way they can't just, all line up, because you're gonna be right here, and they got three people. They could just make you come out, or they could just molly you out. Jesus. Well, you get what I'm saying. But otherwise, you don't, if you have two players alive here, you don't want to be smoking off. Like, if that smoke was there and you're doing some weird shit, the player, if they get back here, now they have all this room that they can work with where you can't see them. They have an easier time gaining control of site. And also, aside from just using smokes to get yourself to site, your team could also use some smokes to section off the site a little bit, to where you can clear the site without having to worry about a ton of different angles all at once. Alright, now I'm going to talk about frag grenades. Now, of course, frags are pretty simple. I got a guy hiding over here behind barrels. Just, if you got terrorists rushing up banana, you can try and nade them all, get some nice splash damage. You can also use a frag grenade to clear smoke, so that you can try to get a pick while the smoke is cleared. And also, instead of just going for a pick if you got several teammates with you, you guys could just clear the smoke and then just push through it and get to site faster. And this is good because if the players on B site are listening and they hear your teammates just running around, being rowdy, making a bunch of fucking noise, they could just call to their teammates, hey, we got like 3 or 4 terrorists sitting up top of banana waiting for the smoke to clear. They could come around and rotate, but now you can just pop the smoke, run through it. All right, now I'm gonna talk about Molotov grenades, which are pretty straightforward, obviously. Like you could decide, hey, I want to molly the bottom of mid for a round, so that way they can't come up mid without receiving damage. Actually, that might. Yeah, you got the general use. You know, you could molly off the other side of arch, or I mean, molly off the other side of apps, or boiler. You could do boiler if you were so inclined. The purpose of it is to slow down a push or to prevent a push. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be throwing a molly anywhere that's going to cut off your teammates' movement. You don't want to trap your teammates. You can learn some Molotov throws, like somehow. There we go. Or you can do this one for new box. So there are lots of mollies you can learn. And the final grenade, we have arrived. It is the Decoy grenade, which is the grenade that everybody makes fun of and everybody hates, and if you try to give them one, they will throw it off of the map and then scream at you. And I don't think it's that bad. It's cheap. It's not that great, but I mean, it's something. You can use it as a fake flash because in appearance, it appears a little bit like a flashbang when it's in the air because they're shaped similar. They just have different colors. Like, it would take a pretty good player to discern the difference in the moment. So what this means is you could throw a decoy, and then you can swing and peek with the decoy, and you know it's never going to blind anybody. But you could catch an enemy player off guard. They're going to see it flying through the air. They're going to think that's a flashbang, so they're going to turn. And then you can just come around and shoot them while they're turning away. That is what I prefer to use them for. They can also be used for faking. So if you wanted to give the impression that there were more terrorists at a side than there are, you could throw a decoy up there, and then while the decoy's going off, you can fire some shots with it. Because decoys are pretty easy to recognize because they have kind of a pattern to the way they shoot. It's not like, you know, dead on. It's not like, it's not rhythmic. It's a little bit random, but you can still kind of figure it out. But if you throw one and then you're shooting alongside it, it makes it a lot harder for the enemy to discern that that's a decoy. And so if you got a guy up here playing apps and he sees you shooting and he hears more shooting, he's going to assume that there's multiple players, so they could potentially draw a rotate from B, which would put 4 players at A and 1 at B, and then it's just you. But they think there's multiple people, so it could just be you, and then you got 4 teammates going up banana, getting ready to execute a site take. It's very easy to take site. If you've got 4 terrorists versus 1 counter-terrorist, it's going to be gravy sauce, and you're just going to run in there, and you can molly shit off and shoot them in the throat, and then you plant the bomb. And it's great. So decoy is really not... It's not that bad. It serves a purpose. It's just not that great, either. It's mid. But that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Just get out there, throw some grenades, get a feel for it. But like I said, stay away from those flashbangs if you're new. Don't be blinding your teammates. Don't be doing crazy shit. And also, here's my final tip. Actually, I have 2 final tips for you. Number 1 is, if you're a newer player, the reason you don't want to be focusing on grenades, especially flashbangs, is because, like a smoke grenade, you're pretty much never going to die while throwing a smoke grenade, or you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because you should know when it's safe to throw one. But people out here are dying throwing flashbangs, because it's a combat grenade. You're going to be throwing it while combat is happening. And so you'll peek out to throw a flashbang or, you know, do whatever. And then you're exposed with the grenade and you're just going to get shot down. And you're going to die a lot with flashbangs in your hands. So as a newer player, I would suggest, you know, just really focusing on shooting until you get a good feel for the grenades. No matter what, if you encounter an enemy player, it's better to have your gun out than to have a grenade out. And if you don't know how to use your grenades, like, what were you doing anyway? Like, it's not helping. Just take your time, get used to it, feel it out. Here's my other tip though. This should have been under general tips, but I wasn't thinking about it. But a lot of players, when they're throwing grenades from further away, not doing the right click, when they're doing a left click, they'll, like, if they want to smoke something off, they aim way too high. Like, they'll aim up, and then the grenade will bounce all wonky. But the grenade isn't going to land in the center of the lane if you're throwing it really high. What you want to be doing is aiming more low, like at the lower portion of the wall and running forward. That was actually shitty. You know what? Don't even take my advice. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I swear it works for me. It works for me. I always, instead of aiming like smoking off mid, instead of aiming high, where it does this double bounce thing and it also ends up really deep if you do that. Like for this smoke, you really want the smoke to be coming up to the edge of the walls here so that they can't walk through the smoke and then have cover. You really want to be smoking it off closer so that the smoke plumes and they can't hide anywhere when they come out of the smoke. That's the reason I suggest aiming lower at the wall, because it'll pop closer to where you actually want it to. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumbs it down. I'll be coming back at you with another video here soon. This is a return from an 8-year long hiatus. Decided to return for the CS2 launch. I'm a couple months late, but fuck it. And next I'll be doing what do I want to do next? Shit, I had something written down. I had a plan. I got a plan somewhere. I don't remember what it is, but we're gonna read it and we're gonna do it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this, and take it easy.